Hi, I'm Simon Roderick from FramSearch. I'm delighted to be joined today by the CEO and founder of Tab, Duncan Kreeger. Duncan, how are you today?
Very well, thank you. Very, very well, thanks.
Good. Well, Duncan, I've got so much to talk to you about today. But before I do, I wonder if you wouldn't mind just telling me a little bit about Tab and anyone who's watching.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. So Tab predominantly is a mortgage lender, whereby we lend money to people secured against real estate in the UK. The business has been operational since 2019, and since then we've lent over £250 million, so supporting UK individuals and SMEs. And we have a particular focus on sustainability and trying to do our bit for the environment. So business is currently 30 plus people, based from our fancy new offices in Hertfordshire. And we've got an incredible diverse team, and the business is in really good shape, and the plan for us moving forward is to keep developing new products, some of which are very close in the pipeline and others which still sort of remain a pipe dream, but we're certainly on our way to finding a way.
You've come an awful long way very quickly, which is really impressive. And I've been to the offices and I can clarify and confirm that they are really wonderful. So I'd urge anyone to go and visit you and enjoy looking at that architecture. Duncan,
Yeah.
this isn't your first business. I mean this in a positive sense. You are a very interesting character. I think you set your
Yeah.
first business up at 17, and obviously your previous incarnation was incredibly successful. I wondered if you wouldn't mind telling me a little bit about your previous career.
Yeah, I mean, as far as my previous career is concerned, I'd say sort of previous and current, because although Tab is the only business that I work for full time, I still maintain an interest in several other, mainly property related businesses. To give you an example, I am a non-exec director at a business called Premier Block Management. That's a business that I bought into post me leaving my previous firm, and I've helped shape and guide that business as it's grown. A lot of skills are transferable from one business to another. So although I have this kind of super positive experience with my previous lending business, there's also a lot of skills that other businesses can benefit from. So trying to sort of put those skills to good use. You're right, I did start my first business at 17. I learned quite early on how to register a company, open a bank account, form a board, and do some basic marketing. And I guess my experience is that almost every business is reliant upon sales. If you don't have any sales, then there isn't much else to do in the office. So, being a kind of salesman at heart, it's always been about sort of leveraging on my skills, and really importantly, trying to surround myself with good people. And as I said once or twice before, I've found that a lot of those skills are transferable, not just in the property sector, but I often find myself sitting with family and friends talking about what they can do to sort of change the dial a little bit. And I enjoy it. For me, I enjoy getting out of bed every day and got a team around me that believes in the direction of travel that we're going in. So I could probably talk for a long time about previous businesses, but I think I've covered a kind of snapshot of who I am and how I look at the world.
Very insightful. I do agree with you. Somebody somewhere's got to do the sales in a business, and I often wonder in some companies they're a little bit embarrassed about it. Perhaps they need to get over that embarrassment. But if I had a sort of comment on financial services in post financial crisis, there's probably been less entrepreneurs coming into the sector for a variety of reasons. What advice would you give to any would-be financial services entrepreneurs?
I think my advice is normally about getting on with it. Starting a new business. So, I mean, there's two different routes. I mean, going obviously experience is key, and trying to gain the best experience one can, even if it's not a 20-year stint at a big city firm. Having a job and understanding the basics, the etiquette, if you like, of how a business should be run, I think is really important, but not essential. And other than that, I think my advice normally is about trying something, and getting on with it and trying to obtain real feedback, even if it's just from one or two people, and trying to sort of listen and learn and adapt. A lot of people's problem is that they don't get to the start line. So they think of all of the reasons why they shouldn't do something, not just in financial services, in all sectors. And I think it's really important to lose a fear of failure and just accept that if it goes wrong, nothing will happen other than you will have learned something about what not to do next time. And the most important piece of advice that I have given and continue to give is to surround yourself with good people. So not surrounding yourself with negative people who want to tell you why not to do something, but trying to seek out advice and guidance from those that actually care and understand what it is that you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, as somebody who runs their own business, I think lots of very good potential entrepreneurs spend, lots of time watching The Apprentice, but they never get to the start line. And I think it's that fear of failure that, and maybe as a culture in the UK, we're not as, positive around people starting and failing and then learning from that and starting again. But I couldn't agree more about getting yourself to the starting line. And talking of starting lines, having had a very successful business before, what brought you back to the property market and made you set up Tab?
Innovation really is the answer to that question. I felt that, I learned through my experience of starting, growing and selling a business, what I enjoyed the most, and which bits I didn't enjoy. And also where, you sort of get to a point where you've built a business and sold it and you think, if I was going to do it again, what would I do next time? And I had a period of time where I wasn't able to re-enter the market because of what's called non-compete agreements that I'd signed when I sold the equity, meaning I couldn't do specific things for 2 years. During that period of time, I spent a lot of sort of brain power thinking about what else I would do and why. And really, as it turned out, that was the kind of mindset that I was in, because I wanted to honour what I set out to honour with regard to not encroaching on that business. And then after a period of time, I started to think more about what could be done differently, what could be done better, if you like. So that gave me the impetus to start again. And when I talk about innovation, I really mean utilising technology to our advantage. We don't purport ourselves to be a high-tech business. But what we do is we use all of the tools around us to benefit us as a business, and equally as important, our entire customer base, whether they're investors in loans or property, or people that want to introduce new business to us. And I started to look at the world through the lens of what would I expect if I was a customer. And to give you an example, what I do expect from a financial institution is I expect access to real-time information. I want to know how much and when, and what are the hoops that I need to go through. And I wanted to improve the process around ID and anti-money laundering and ID verification. There are a host of online tools, and in 60 seconds you can get a response back, and is this the person you think it is? And that cuts out a lot of time wasting later down the line, but also gives us a great data set to rely upon. And these are kind of very, very small examples, but the theme is, how can we innovate? How can we take this kind of standard short-term mortgage product and make it more accessible, to give more understanding and detail around it. So that is really what drove me back into the market.
I guess from what you're saying as well, using the technology to increase transparency and also transaction time for your customer base. So using it smartly to make their experience better, really.
Yeah, and at the same time, the person on the other end of the phone as well, which is us. No duplication. So we talk a lot about one central source of data, one central source of the truth, I should say. And that doesn't work when the finance company operates on one package and the collections department focus on another, and the underwriting department do their things in writing. And it may sound simple and obvious, but I think one of the benefits that I had starting again is that I didn't have this legacy of paperwork that needed to be sort of filed and shredded. So when we started this business, we built all of our technology on the Amazon Web Services platform, meaning that we've tapped into the one of the greatest resources there are. And as far as the standard of our platform, I think we're up there with the very best. But also it meant that we could build things and add things on as we needed them.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the moment, there's lots in the headlines around interest rates, cost of living crisis. Obviously, got this dreadful war in the Ukraine. We've also been through a highly volatile and unique experience with the pandemic as well. How are you seeing the lending environment at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, look, I try not to tarnish anything with the same broad brush. So people often ask me about property prices. The way that I would attack this is to talk about the different types of properties in different types of locations. So first and foremost, there's a difference between residential property where somebody lives and a commercial property which covers almost everything else. Could be an office, could be a shop, could be a community centre. Could be any number of other things as well. So I think it's very dangerous to say, I see this trend in the market or I see this trend in the market. There are things that I'd say have changed people's mindset a little bit, like outside space and gardens being a prime example. I think it would be harder as a residential developer to sell flats without balconies or gardens now than it has been in the past. And I also think coupled that with the fact that people want more space and the ability to more flexible working arrangements, that there's been more than a mental shift, a physical shift to move out to greener locations that in the past might have seemed like a very far away and now seem much closer to home because you can stay connected. I think interest rates going up will cause a lot of pain, if I'm honest. I'm not a particularly negative person, and most of the people around me, I kind of pride myself on being super positive. That doesn't mean that I'm not open to the general direction of travel, and I guess my positivity kicks in when I start to look at where the opportunities are to make a difference. But I see rising interest rates coupled with rising cost of energy being very, very tricky for quite a large majority of people, sort of that otherwise wouldn't have had to for a long time worry about servicing their sort of household bills. On the lending side for us, I think there will be waves of opportunity, and I think we need to have the right balance of being ambitious and cautious. So as a kind of more mature business, 4 years on, 35 members of staff, et cetera, there starts to become other considerations around protecting what we have and trying to continue with product innovation so that products actually make a difference in the current climate rather than things that look great on paper but actually don't give anything back to the community.
Yeah. So as you said, you've got to talk about the property. I'm sure you're asked at dinner parties constantly, actually, about the property market, but you've got to talk about it very specifically about the type of property in this and the subsector almost of the industry, and potentially some headwinds there in terms of household spending and bills and everything else.
Location, infrastructure, type of business, type of people running the business, difficulties with imports, exports, all these sort of other factors around the edges. I mean, just staying on energy for a second, I think businesses will suffer the most. undoubtedly. I'm not saying that individuals won't suffer, because I'm concerned that they will, but there isn't a cap in the same way. And some businesses rely on 24-hour refrigeration, vans, trucks being out on the road for prolonged periods of time. And there are sort of other things to consider, even in, going back to the property market. It's not enough to know it's this type of property in this type of location, but you also have to know what's the longevity of the business that operates from there, what's the cost of them becoming net zero carbon, if that's part of their pledge, these ongoing looking forward things that will not necessarily have a really big impact right this minute, but will undoubtedly have a dramatic impact over, the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's going to, well, unfortunately, it's going to be an interesting time, but as you rightly said, those times always throw up opportunities as well. So, shouldn't be too negative, I think.
For sure.
Duncan, thank you very much for your time today. I've really appreciated it. Obviously, if anybody's got any further questions, anything that Duncan's raised, and please don't hesitate to contact either he or I. But I shall let you enjoy your day, Duncan, and thank you very much again for taking time to talk to me.
My pleasure, and it's a good place to stay tuned on to what we call Tab University, where we're constantly trying to, as you've done really well today, interview people, talk to people in the market about real life situations, whether they're, how to build a house, how to get a mortgage, how to save for my future. Our aim is not to get anything back from that. It is for us to provide some value to the market. And I think if people are looking for a good resource, that'd be a good place to start.
And just give me that name one more time, Duncan.
It's Tab University. It's part of our website, and a lot of the stuff that you'll see on our LinkedIn will be focused around podcasts that we do in video, and also in the usual audio way. But what I'll do is I'll make sure that you've got a link to post in your LinkedIn post that I'm sure you'll be doing today.
Well, I definitely recommend people check that out. That sounds like a great tool for people. And thanks again, Duncan. Have a good day.
My pleasure. Thanks for your time.
Cheers.
Bye-bye for now.